Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. Lovely to see you all. I am joined by Ginette and the lovely Elyse. We are some of the mediums and channelers from Avalon Spirit, and we come together every week to chat about all sorts of things. We've got some fun, kind of more specific topics coming up, but this week we are talking about the eclipse. It's also Friday the 13th today, which I always thought was like an actual thing, but I was watching a medium that I really enjoy, and she was saying that Friday the 13th is like just a thing that we made up. I don't know if that's true or not, but there's all this like spookiness around it, but it's not actually like an astrological thing, or
No,
there's some
it's like the movie or something that
yeah.
Friday the
I did
13th.
not realize this. I didn't think it
Did
was a
you
bad thing, but I didn't realize we just made it up.
do you know though that number 13 is a very divine feminine number, represents divine
Yes.
feminine? So
Yeah.
funny how
That makes
it
sense.
got flipped into
Yeah.
negative, who knows when.
It's bad.
Yeah. It is a divine feminine. I always think of 13 as such a lucky number 13.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for my kids today, I'm like, oh, it's lucky number 13 today. It's a Friday the 13th. So we are bound to have good luck and whatever. So
But isn't it funny that even some hotels will not put a level 13? Like most hotels
I
don't
worked in
have
an
a
office
level
building.
13 floor.
I didn't know
that didn't have a 13th floor.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
It went from 12 to 14.
Isn't that crazy? How like
even though
deep
it is the 13th floor, like that doesn't
label
change
it that.
the physics of it. We're just not going to call it 13th floor.
Yeah.
Such a strange thing.
I know. And then even numerologically speaking, 13, when you break it down, goes into number 4, right? Because you add the two numbers together, it equals a 4, and 4 is about stability. So
it's funny. And it's funny too, this medium on TikTok that I was saying to Ginette this morning. I just love her stuff because it's so grounded. Emily Dexter, I think is her name.
Yeah.
And I just love her take on things, and it's always so grounded, and it often aligns with like the things that I'm kind of feeling. And she spoke to the idea of like, it's such a, we made it up. It's a divine feminine number, but then we collectively decided, oh, it's this bad luck day and spooky things happen on Friday the 13th. But that collective energy puts so much towards
it creates
an experience on a day. We created it.
We create it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So happy Friday the 13th. That's not actually what we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about the solar eclipse, new moon in Libra that is tomorrow.
Yay, you!
But it's here already.
It's here.
It is.
How are we feeling?
So
I know I'm feeling like,
oof. Yeah, like what is coming in with the feelings of the eclipse season? How are you feeling it?
Me?
Go for it, Elyse. You go first.
Yes, both of you.
As the house Libra, it's been a wild week. I will say that.
Yeah.
It has been a wild week. Not in a bad way. Intense moments for sure. But what I'm really noticing, and I'm not super attuned to like the astrology of things. I really want to learn more. But for me, we had talked in our Dark Night of the Soul, there's all these things coming up, and there's been a lot that's come up in this week leading up to the eclipse in support of, and I'll use air quotes around support, in that my mental human brain is like, what the actual for some of these things? It feels really intense. It feels painful. It feels joyful. It feels, triggering. It feels grounding. Like it's been all sorts of different things. So some of the things don't feel super supportive, but when I can actually kind of process them and step back, they really are in support of the greater pieces of my life that I'm working through right now.
Yes.
And so it's been a wild week because it's like up here, down here, up here, down here, up here, down here. And I, just kind of was sitting with this morning, it's all of these pieces coming together. It's these foundational pieces coming together so that as we start, because I think this is the beginning of eclipse season, with this one, people are talking about it as quite a big, powerful eclipse. For me, it's feeling like these foundational, fundamental pieces coming together that that are going to lay the foundation for the massive shifts that the universe provides through eclipse season and through this eclipse as we move forward. But it feels like drinking from the fire hose. Fast
I
and
just
furious.
want to sip. I just want to sip.
It's a little
Right.
parched. Nope. You are not parched.
It's so true. It's so
Get a
true.
shower.
You know, and I
That's me.
agree. I agree with everything you're saying too. I really do. I think it is highlighting things for us to like maybe change a narrative on or double check our perspective. Like, is that really the perspective you want to carry, or is there a different one? I think it's asking us to be really observant. Whatever is coming up, even the good things, right? Like, it's also asking us to observe the goodness in the life, the bounty. Like, where are you thriving? Notice it. Don't miss it, right? Like,
Which works in with the perception thing, because the perception thing
Totally.
is such a big theme.
Yeah. Yeah. But intense is definitely the underlying energy of it.
Have you guys been noticing like a funky timeline type of thing too?
Yes.
Tons.
Like I was
Yes.
saying to my daughter, Sarah, the other day, last night, that the amount of deja vu that I've experienced in the last week is insane. And I haven't I used to experience a lot of it. But I haven't really, there's been timeline stuff for sure, but like really strong, long lasting deja vu has been occurring for me. And we were saying before we jumped on here, almost the feeling of like hours being lost or gained. Like timeline stuff has been really funky. And I'm like, what is this all about? And it's almost like how I perceive it is like how they've described it to me, which is so hard to really like describe in 3D human language. But it's like a recalibration system. When there is a bunch of things that have to show up in order to be cleared, transmuted, integrated, when it's done on such a large scale on a collective level that's coming in with this eclipse, there's a large amount of recalibration that has to happen. Recalibration, how are they saying it? But it will directly affect timelines and even like your cellular structure and how you respond in the human level while the recalibrations happen. And it can't just happen at night. Because it's happening so quick. So we're experiencing it during the day and all of a sudden like kind of shaky almost, or like ungrounding kind of thing, where it's like, what the heck just happened? You know what I mean? And so that's why they're trying to describe it as this recalibration that's going on, that's coming in with this like massive energy in the eclipse season, and that's coming in with this full moon and coming in with the eclipse, that we all have to feel it, and how we perceive it is always going to be different. But I mean, like, I'm feeling it within like timeline stuff for sure. And same with like sleep, rest, my physical body's reaction. Like, I have to be super, super, super careful on what I'm putting into my body, because I will react so strongly, because it's like my cells are all working to recalibrate. So everything's quite a bit more sensitive. You know what I mean? So everything is like pretty heightened in this, but it's not like it's heightened because of this intense energy. The recalibration is actually bringing a peaceful new perception, is bringing that aligned ability to be able to disconnect or kind of not like cut away, but disconnect from the things that aren't serving us, and actually integrating these new things to allow us to be open to receive and move forward. So it's like getting a tune-up. You know
what else I find is happening with the timeline thing you were mentioning is my guys described it as this. So you know how so many people talk about the split between 3D and 5D, right? And so they're splitting away from each other, right? So it's kind of opening up. So depending where you are in your ascension, the void between 3D and 5D is getting wider and wider. So some of those time slips are sometimes if you find yourself, say, in 3D or say even a 5D, whichever one, the difference or the distance, it's a metaphorical distance between the two, is getting bigger now. So then you have to almost like jump back over to the other. It's not just like a quick, like, oh, here we go. Oops, little off balance there, back where I want to be. It's not just a little slip now. Now it's a bigger jump. And so the jump from one to the other is clunkier and different flow of energy in them. So sometimes we'll find ourselves flowing into 5D, but then say something knocks us back into 3D. And then all of a sudden 3D feels so different.
Yes.
Time is different. Conversations are a little bit different, or what you thought had already happened hasn't happened yet. So you're having deja vu. Like the distance, depending on your ascension, is making it bigger. So it's a wilder ride. We can't just straddle it anymore. Now we're like having to jump kind of back and forth.
Yes.
One of the things they were just saying on that
sense. Oh.
One of the things they were just saying on that note is that going back to kind of some of the intensity of things coming up, that separation of the 3D, 5D is some of the things that are coming up. I was speaking to a client yesterday, and they were speaking to, I'm having these challenges that are really like deeply living in me, and I'm getting really triggered, and this stuff is coming up. And it's with people that I just don't feel are on the same timeline as me, that same kind of 3D, 5D. Mm-hmm. And so when you're back in a 3D experience with them, because we are kind of bouncing back and forth, depending on what we're doing, where we are, our own ascension, etc., you get back into that kind of 3D realm with this person or this experience. And it's so overwhelmingly ick and so much more challenging that you're just like, and it's creating this really deep internal frustration. And what was coming through then, and they're kind of linking it now, is this idea of that is part of this eclipse process, though, because those are things that are keeping you tethered there.
Yes.
That are keeping you in that kind of, and it's not to say better or worse, but just these things that are keeping you heavier, keeping you tethered more into that 3D aspect, and you're wanting to go the opposite direction. So it's like those things are coming up, move through them, work through them in whatever way aligns for you, so that it doesn't have to feel so clunky, that transition back and forth, because you're not bringing your heavy ass backpack back and forth with you full of all of your 3D trauma, garbage, stress, whatever.
Definitely. Oh gosh, does that ever resonate, Elyse?
Mm-hmm.
Big time, that tethering, because I was having a conversation with my sister about this actually yesterday, and she's like, I feel like I on a regular basis reside in such a higher frequency on a regular basis, right? Like on a day-to-day level, and her connection to spirit and everything. And then she said something will come up, like an old trigger, right? A personal trigger. And she'd be like, I thought I dealt with this already. I thought, like, why is this coming up? This is such old stuff. But we still do have these deep-rooted cords, connections to that, which show up in so many different ways, right? But like, we can look at it and being like, maybe this is your opportunity to, with love, release your connection or that tether or that cord that we have to that, because that is an underlying connection that we still have into our 3D perspective that we're still holding on to for some reason. You know what I mean? Or that's still a thing that is to be looked at. And so with love, we can disconnect it and then refill that energy. You know, I've noticed that too, is like there's a lot of that 3D perspective or old habits or old perspectives really that aren't yours anymore, but are holding you there for a reason. It's like, oh, that's interesting. And without giving yourself any grief about it or coming down hard on yourself, you can just be like, I understand how this is still connected, because that was such a big cord. That was such a big piece in my life, but it really holds no weight anymore. It doesn't need to come with me. Right? It doesn't need to come with me. So with love, I release, I cut this cord or send it back. And then I always picture that leaves kind of an open cord on my end. And I plug that into universal love energy to be able to be filled up, and any of that old vibration to be taken down into the earth to be regenerated into love frequency. And that's just my system that I do so that I can refill what I've let go of, so that I can be filled with that energy, almost like plugging in the Avatar movie. I always think of that, like where they plug in So any cords that I cut, I always replug the cords into loving vibration of openness and my highest timeline frequency, so that I can be regenerated with that new energy, right? And so that's just a little thing that I do, but I understand, because when the separation is becoming bigger and bigger, these cords become more obvious, right? Because
Yeah.
they're the ones that are still being held there. And so I don't know why, but they just keep reiterating that it's not about judgment on self, that those cords still exist. It just requires nurturing and love from the frequency of your highest timeline to be able to release those with love and nurturing, and then regenerate your own energy into the frequency that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Totally. I like that idea of plugging in the severed cord. I've heard people
Mhm.
talk about like cut the cord, imagine tying it in a bow and send it back with love and whatever. But I really like that idea of like plug it in
Plug
where
it
you
in to
want.
regenerate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
And
So it
send it
closes the
somewhere,
circuit.
because
yeah,
yeah, because
exactly.
sometimes that cord is deeply connected to my heart. Sometimes it's connected to my like uterus, or my like 6-year-old self, let's say.
Mhm.
Okay. And then when I cut that cord, I regenerate, or I plug that into whatever that aspect of self really needs,
Mhm.
versus the compensatory strategy in which the cord was created in the first place. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Yeah.
so if that 6-year-old self really needs to be hugged and nurtured and rocked and loved or played with or whatever, that's kind of the energy frequency of what I plug back into, so that because I'm the only one who knows what I need, right? We're the only ones. We can't look outside of ourselves. So if we plug into that generative energy of exactly what we know we need, it almost feels like that circuit is realigned then.
Mhm.
And that like deep memory in your body and your experience can actually be almost rewired to the frequency in which you're aligning with. And this eclipse is so powerful that it really helps you do that quickly,
Mhm.
because it
You know,
comes in with power.
exactly. And it's funny because as you're talking, my guides are showing me this really interesting concept too, is with this eclipse, it's they call it the ring of fire eclipse, because the position of the moon with the moon isn't big enough to completely black out the entire sun. So
Yeah.
you have a ring around it. And they said, consider the ring like the light in the dark, right? Like the light
Ooh.
in the dark. You're not being put into darkness, but rather there is still light, even though most of what you see is dark. So they're like, consider within the energy of what's happening right now in the world, in our own journeys, wherever we're finding darkness, consider the light that emanates and that is still bright in the dark, and focus on
Yes,
that. And then that is where the eclipse season can bring miracles, because
definitely.
that's where the universe comes in, like Elyse was saying in the beginning, and acts in your favor, right? And so we have an opportunity now with this to see where miracles can happen, synchronicities can happen amongst all the darkness that we're seeing too, right?
Yeah.
Like there is light in the dark. So I had to
Yes.
add that in there because I thought that was really neat.
Yeah.
I love that because, I mean, as we know, there's a lot of really dark, scary, hard things happening in the world. And, looking at some of the tragedies in the Middle East, I've been taking a lot of time this week to learn, because admittedly, I don't have a lot of knowledge about that area of the world and the really long history and intricacies of relationships in those areas, and know people impacted on both sides, and not physically there, but through generations and friends and families. And
Yeah.
there's this really, for me, I'm always really, I want to know what's happening in the world, and I want to understand it, and I want to be aware and see as much as I can. And it's challenging because it's heavy and it's intense and it's hard to see and it's hard to learn. And sitting in a very privileged place in this world, it's easy to say that. And we also have to see the light. I saw, I've seen in and amongst some of the reading and learning that I've done, these really beautiful stories of our human connection, of the love that we have for people, of our ability to show up for one another. And I shared this beautiful Instagram post written by someone, and I don't remember her name at the moment, but talking about like in these moments, our humanity is what we cannot lose. And our love for ourselves and this earth and other people, people's children, the desire for safety, like we cannot lose those things in the darkness. And it's so easy to do that because it feels like it's either fear or anger or whatever kind of darkness you want to label it as. It's so easy for that to take over. And so if you are somebody just kind of on that specific note that is learning and taking in some of that information, where can you stay connected to your humanity, and where can you stay connected to your spirit and the love, and still do the things? If you're called to activism, if you're called to whatever it is, do those things, and keeping your tether in that light, because it can be so easy to get pulled down into only darkness, and that just doesn't shift things.
Exactly, because what that does is that takes on essentially the projection, and then that's what you project. So you pretend you're the projector, right? Like you're shining out, and whatever you shine out is what you see. And so we've talked about this in the past of like, if what you see is something in your direct light, your perception is, and what you see in your perception all around you in your current life is things that continually, you know, back up the narrative that it's not good enough. You're not going to get it. Of course, it's going to lose, blah, 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 hardship, that kind of stuff. Then it's not like I'm the one, I just have bad luck. It's like, no, like change the projector, and then the projection changes, right? And so when we have this like massive darkness that's happening all over globally, if we take on that energy and then continue to shine that from our projection, then that's what's spreading. And unfortunately, that is what some people want, right? With the, what we take in to allow what we're projecting, we are in charge of that. So if we can take charge of how we're projecting out, think about how much more we can project lightness, love. We have that ability. We can't go there and change a lot, but what we can do is change the projector so that so much more of what is being projected is light, is spirit, is love, and what we're here to be and do and teach and show. Because, and then before you know it, there's a heck of a lot more projection of light than there is of darkness. And if you want to do something about it, then it's like the very first thing you change is the light bulb in the projector so that you can start shining that light. You know what I mean?
And it goes back to exactly what we were saying about collectively, we put an intention on Friday the 13th, and it has then become this thing, right? That's a light, easy way of saying it, but it's an example of how your intention collectively does shift and change things. And that can feel really like, well, how is that going to work with these massive global things that are happening? And it's scary. But what's the alternative? Like what's the alternative of, like you said, projecting out something that just perpetuates more and more and more of the things that we're wanting to shift away from?
Exactly.
So
it does
don't
no
use
good.
it as a way. Yeah. Don't use it as a way to bypass and ignore, but use it as a way to connect into love, share support, have conversations with people that are really having a hard time, or that they know somebody that lives there, or like whatever it looks like. There's so many different ways to be active
you don't
without.
know. You don't know how the light is all going to hit. It can be one smile in a supermarket that changes someone's trajectory for the day.
Yeah.
I saw something that reminds me of this is, I saw this video, and so it was someone's home camera, some home security camera into the garage, and the garage door was open. And there was this man that came into the garage, was snooping around. It was daytime, but their dog, they had a golden retriever, was in the garage. And the guy's snooping around, the dog saunters up, and the guy, you can hear him. And there was this conversation kind of like, where he's like, "You're such a cute guy." And the dog's like all happy and like energy and whatever. And the guy was like, after a while, he's petting him. He's like, "You know what? You just totally changed my mind. I was going to come in here and steal a bike or something, but you're just the cutest thing." and I'm just not going to do that because you filled my heart. And
Oh,
it's
I've
like,
got
what?
goosebumps all over.
But it's like how energy can change a situation. Like you said, the smile, like this dog completely changed this guy's whole energy.
I think that's why animals are here.
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
why they came here and they're like, all right, these humans need a little help.
Well,
We'll
totally.
come
And
without the ego.
that's
and
it. That's exactly what they'll choose to do is like, they're like, I don't want to come in with the whole human dynamic. So oftentimes they will come as dogs, most
Yeah.
specifically. They can come as other animals, but often they will come as dogs. So there are a lot of dog souls that have been human souls before that knew they could come in better as a companion.
Yeah. Without the ego.
Without the
Because the
ego.
ego is
Yeah.
that one's the tough one for our souls to really integrate into, right?
Yeah. That human ego.
Yeah.
I think my dog is in his first dog life because he's still got a real ego.
Totally does.
Like, oh,
He
you want me to
totally
do that?
does.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm
Nah.
talking Winston. Dexter too, but Dexter was like loving. Yeah, he was different. Winston is like, no, I'm good with, I love you and I'm going to give you lots of unconditional love. And then I'm going to flip over into my human ego self. That's like,
Yeah.
I'll do what I want. Thanks.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Aw.
So
another thing for the eclipse too is that the powerful energy really aligns with the frequency of your intention. And so that can come in thought, like be really, really aware of your thought, not in a fear way of like, if you think these negative things, they'll come to it, but really like changing the thought pattern and moving from like thinking into your body, into feeling, because when you do that integration into feeling it, then that's what really like sets the stage, is when you actually like move into it and then feel it, instead of being like, I want this and this and this and this. It's like feel into what it feels like to see it and to experience it and to have it, because that generates so much more of the frequency to be able to invite that into your life. And then those connections that are made within that higher frequency are more available. So it's like a dominoes effect. With this very intense, strong energy, you can start seeing very quickly the results. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, if only I want this and it's way up here and I know I'm going to have to do this, 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 and this. It's like, well, not necessarily. It's because the power of your intention, moving from the thought pattern into the feeling it and the projection of actually having and experiencing it, is manifested in this energy like 1,000%. And so people can start to actually see that result like instantaneously. So really give it a try. Really give it a try.
And if that feels tricky at all, because I know for me, when my brain is stressed or there's a lot going on, it can be hard for me to like make that connection point. Our cute little human brains, think of something you love. Think of your dog. Think of your children. Think of something that brings you joy, brings you happiness. Our cute little human brains don't know the difference between an imagination and thought and what's presently happening.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Watch a funny movie and then use that as that gateway, right? That like, okay, now I'm feeling joyful feelings. I'm feeling love. I'm feeling da-da-da. Now it's a lot easier to turn towards those things that you're desiring and not having to get so caught up in the human brain. Because my brain will fight me on it sometimes and I have to sneak around it to facilitate that.
Yeah. Good point. There's my 2 bits. Good point. Good point.
So maybe lastly, are we doing anything as like ritual for the eclipse?
I was going to ask the exact same question. So obviously.
Okay, well, I'm not doing anything but observing, because for me personally, I felt like I've done, in the days leading up to it, I have done the intention setting. I've had my conversations with my guides really clearly out loud to be sure that it has been said or clarified. And those conversations or intention setting or manifesting or whatever is to me always just in conversation. I'm like, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm noticing. This is what I'd like to focus on. give me some input on this. Like, it's kind of like a meeting is what I have. So I've been doing that the last several days. And so for me now, I'm going to sort of sit back, be conscious of my own thoughts though, in those interactions, but I'm really going to be observing and then consciously reacting is kind of where I'm sitting.
Yay.
Good. Yeah. Good point.
Elyse,
yeah. Good point. Thank you.
Elyse, what are you doing?
I am, well, so I know a lot of the rhetoric about eclipses is kind of just like let the universe do its work. So I think it'll look different for everyone. And I think we're all going to have different processes that we're doing. For me, because it's been a fire hose week, I am going to the Taylor Swift concert movie tonight. So I'm going to elicit some joy. I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to sing some songs. And then I think I'm just going to, because again, I've been doing a lot of processing in a different way. I'm going to just write out some things that I want to just like release, let go of, but from that like open joy place rather than like, everything sucks. So I really want to do it from a place of like lightness and joy and that a different kind of energy. So that's going to be my process. And then I think tomorrow I'm just going to let her ride out.
Love that.
What about you?
I have also been kind of prepped all week. I had kind of a stormy week for sure. And so in the process of that, Spirit has guided me through some really intense, beautiful perspective shifts. And so I know that within this energy, it's me like integrating it all. And actually, like I said, it's like I know it, but I'm really working on integrating it into my physical self so that I can project from this place of authenticity from the perception change. And so really I'm like just focusing on feeling into this perception change because I know it's aligned. I know it's authentic, and that where it came from before was from like hurt or what, like past experiences. So it's almost like I am using this energy from the eclipse to really nourish and help this new perspective integrate into my like awareness. And in doing that, I know that it really helps for me to just be very playful and be very present with my family. My kids are always like my grounding force. It's my daughter's birthday party tomorrow. And so lots of fun and play and joy. And I just love that. I just become a big kid. So I think the thing that gets me into my like best projection is that playful energy. And so I'm just really working on the integration part and like honing in on my belief systems that I'm safe, secure, loved.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, happy eclipse.
Happy eclipse.
Happy start of eclipse season. I don't even know, how long does it last?
Well, it's till the 28th. No, because we have 2 eclipses. So we have the solar tomorrow and the lunar on the 28th. We have just 2, as I'm aware of. I may be in a different timeline.
Yeah, we don't know where we are.
Happening a lot, but I believe it's just the 2 eclipses this time around.
And then the energy kind of dissipates all the way to, I think they said like November 8th or something like that.
Okay.
That
feels like long enough for me, so I'm not mad about that. Maybe we can have some like joyful end of the year pieces.
Really good stuff. Like,
it is,
really good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I have heard from the astrology peeps that October into November has some wild astrology.
Yes.
So
yes,
do what you need to do to support yourself through that. And yeah, all right. We'll see you on the other side. I mean, we'll see you before then, but anyways, have a great, we'll wrap up now. Have a great week. Happy eclipse. Let us know what you're doing. Let us know how it was for you.
Yeah.
And we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.